You are listening to That Hoarder Overcome Compulsive Hoarding. Learn about hoarding disorder from me, somebody who has it. I promote a better understanding of hoarding disorder, a stigmatised mental health condition that is mocked rather than treated with compassion. I want to change that, and by talking openly and honestly about hoarding, I hope to start conversations that help. Find out how to support the podcast at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support. Finally, I am not a doctor. I'm just a hoarder doing her best. So do seek professional support if and when you need it. Hey, how are you? I am feeling a bit more like myself. This is my tentative first week back after a few weeks off the podcast. I think giving myself a few weeks breathing space has been really helpful. So thank you for your patience, and I hope you enjoyed the episode replays that were in your feed instead. So it has come to my attention that I will do pretty much anything rather than feel the feelings. And what's been happening recently, and some thinking and processing I've been doing for a few months, has got me thinking a lot about feeling the feelings. So as well as the kind of obvious mental health stuff I have that lead me to do this podcast, I also have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It was diagnosed years ago, and I had treatment and I had support, and it has been as well managed as these things ever can be for some years. Recently, it has made a quite dramatic reappearance, and I understand some of the reasons why. I don't fully understand it, but it's been quite overwhelming and difficult to manage. And that's what I've been working on, I guess, for the last couple of months with mixed degrees of success. And some of what started me thinking about feeling the feelings was that I was interviewed on a podcast called Death, Sex and Money. And that episode went out on their feed at the start of October last year. And Anna Sale is a very thoughtful interviewer. And she got some things out of me that I don't often talk about. And please bear in mind at this point that there are going to be some mentions of self-harm and eating disorders. Not in any detail, but if that's going to be difficult for you to listen to, this might be a bit to skip. But I had been talking about how as a teenager I was anorexic and later bulimic. And I was talking about using self-harm as a coping mechanism, especially when I was younger. And then we were talking about hoarding, because that's what the interview was about. And Anna made a connection that I'd never made before, and it has stuck with me somewhere in the back of my mind for months, and I've occasionally accessed it, and it's made me think. So have a listen to just this short bit that Anna Sale said in my Death, Sex and Money interview that is part of the reason I'm talking about this topic today.
So for me, what I'm hearing is kind of in the universe of how your mind works, there have been things that have been overwhelming and anxiety provoking that then you've managed in different ways that have not served you.
Yeah.
But there's like a pattern of how do I avoid this thing, so I'm going to do this thing, that then can snowball and make life harder instead of easier.
Yeah. So I had always known that to some degree self-harm served the purpose of avoiding feeling the feelings, and that to some degree eating disorders served the purpose of not feeling the feelings, and that to some degree hoarding stuff served the purpose of helping me to not feel the feelings. But I had never made the link that my entire life has been one thing after another that to some degree do serve that purpose. Now, there are many reasons for self-harm, for anorexia, for bulimia, for hoarding disorder. Many. And none of them are as simple as I did that to avoid the feelings. For me, there are punitive elements, there are protective elements, there's a lot going on. But for me, for each of those things, and plenty of other things I've done in my life, has been to not feel the feelings. And thinking of it in that way, especially in terms of something that feels or seems helpful and then becomes a massive burden or a massive problem, has had me questioning, what if I could feel the really hard feelings? And what if by doing that, things in my life could look a bit different? From a very young age, when something was too hard for me to process, I locked it away. I am an expert compartmentalizer. I have been doing it since I was a small child. When something overwhelms me, I put it in a box and close it. And some of the difficult things in my life have resulted from trying really hard to keep those boxes closed. It's also a very difficult habit to get out of. And since starting to look at it even from a distance, I'm feeling weird about this podcast and my identity here being so compartmentalized from the rest of my life. But basically, compartmentalizing everything, not feeling the feelings, is one of those things that feels like it helps, but in the long run is quite damaging in many ways. And then the last couple of months, I would argue I'm feeling too many feelings. There are a lot of feelings in my brain and in my body lately. Honestly, though, I'm not sure how many feelings you're supposed to feel. But this podcast, therapy I've done, friendships, learning, growing, recent bereavements have all led me to try to be more open to feeling the feelings than blocking them. With a lot of resistance, I'm having a lot of battles in myself about this. But I'm also increasingly seeing that not feeling them is not the solution I've always thought it would be. So I have been doing a lot of thinking. I have been doing a lot of resentful journaling. I hate it, and it does help. I've also been doing a lot of colourful journaling that involves tearing up magazines and gluing things together, which I'm doing in a deliberately messy way, because if I start thinking it has to look good, then I will stop doing it or I will hold back. So making it deliberately, this is meant to look terrible, I will just make it anyway, is helping me to do that in a way that sometimes doesn't even end up looking terrible, but that's not the point. The point is that it's helping me to express things and explore things and even create little bits of hope for myself. Another thing I've been doing, and this is very out of character, is reading bits of poetry. I have never massively got on with poetry. I have spent most of my life reading it and saying, just say what you want to say. Don't say it in code, just say it. But suddenly, reading poetry is really meaningful to me and helping me access feelings and feel feelings. I have been doing a lot of talking to friends. A lot of it. God bless my friends lately, who have been an absolutely incredible source of everything that's keeping me going. And I have been trying to be really proactive in doing things that I don't want to do, but that I know will make me feel better. Going out into the sunshine, going out into nature, things like that I kind of mutter on the way there about how much I don't want to do it, and then I do it and it's lovely. And I'm trying so hard to let myself feel at least some of this. Most of us who hoard know that it can feel very lonely and isolating. One of the things I get from listeners is that sense of connection, And I hear from you that you get the same from the podcast too. If you come along to a De-Hoarding Accountability Zoom session, you can find some of that community in real time. Or if that's not possible, by sharing podcast episodes on your social media or with others directly, you can help others to see that they are also not alone, especially those who've never told anyone they hoard. To join a Zoom accountability session, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/ticket. To share an episode on social media, just use the share button in whichever podcast app you listen on. Thank you. Another reason I'm doing it, even when some of it feels awful, is that the re-emergence of some of the worst PTSD symptoms means that trauma stuff and deep sadness stuff is leaking into how I sleep, which worries me because it shows that my brain and my soul are getting no downtime. And it also shows that suppressing this stuff is not what I need. If I can't even escape it when I'm asleep, then I need to do things differently. And it is hard to feel the feelings, and it is frightening to feel the feelings. And many days I long for the ability to shut it all down again, because some of what's been going on lately is me choosing and being more intentional about feeling the feelings. But some of it is about my brain and body are flooding me with them anyway, whether I choose it or not. And so some days I'm choosing to feel it. Some days I have no choice but to feel it. And that can be really hard, but I can also see, I can't deny anymore, that refusing to really feel this stuff has led me in several quite harmful directions. Not feeling has not served me. And of course I feel, but the really hard stuff, the really objectionable stuff, the really traumatic stuff, the really unpleasant stuff, that's the stuff I haven't allowed myself to feel. And I had that conversation with Anna Sale on Death, Sex and Money. But other conversations I've had on this podcast have reinforced that not feeling can be counterproductive, and that even when we're really scared of feeling things, we maybe need to try. Several conversations I've had with Dr. Jan Eppingstall. We talked in a recent episode about how it can be counterproductive when you try to logic your way through your feelings, which made me laugh so much because that is one of the things I do. I try and logic my way through it. And yeah, it's not massively effective. The conversation I had with Ja Ing about grief, that made me think a lot about feeling the feelings. I had a conversation with a woman called Harriet Impey, and she talked about when you suppress feelings, they can come out sideways. And that wording also stuck with me because that's what my feelings do. I don't feel them. And so I self-harm, or I couldn't eat, or I keep more things than I need. Not feeling has been massively protective, but it's also caused other problems. I was going to say it's caused as many problems as it solved, but I don't know. I don't know what my life would have looked like if I hadn't learnt to compartmentalize difficult and overwhelming things from a young age. I don't know. I do know that I refuse to condemn things like self-harm or eating disorders or hoarding disorder as 100% bad and negative and with no upsides, because we do this stuff for a reason. It wouldn't stick if it didn't serve some purpose for us. And so I can look back at that young girl who couldn't eat, and I wish she could eat, but I understand it, and I honour that she found a way to get through. It may not have been the healthiest way, but it was the best she had with the resources she had. So I've been doing my best to feel. And I've been sharing things with friends on a level that I haven't before. And I do pride myself on being quite open, but there's a degree of distress at which point I will not share. Nobody must see. And I've been challenging that with the help of a couple of really wonderful people in particular. And I've been looking at why I felt I couldn't share the worst moments, the most distraught moments. And in working some of that out, I've been able to challenge it. Some logicking, admittedly, but in a way that was more effective than logicking sadness. And so I feel like I'm being super proactive. I'm talking to people. I'm resentfully journaling. I'm making colourful things. I'm going to things that will make me happy. I'm letting myself feel at least some of it. And sometimes I feel a bit and then shut it down anyway because it's too much. But that's okay because I don't want to flood myself, especially at a point when my brain and my mind and my memories are flooding me anyway. I need some balance. And how to feel the feelings without dwelling and without sinking is a big question in my mind at the moment. And I do not know the answer to that. But I do know that at the moment, at least, my brain is forcing the point. My trauma is forcing the point. My distress is forcing the point. I don't have much choice in how intensely I am thinking and feeling lately. It's not something I'm especially inviting. It's something I feel flooded with. So with that in mind, I'm trying to feel at least some of it rather than suppress the whole lot. It's a really hard line to walk. I don't want to fall into a pit of despair and never get out again. But I also don't want to keep pushing forward in a way that continues this pattern of suppressing the feelings and doing things that are harmful to myself in another way. And just because it's a hard line to walk doesn't mean we need to therefore default to one of the extremes. I am intense at the moment. I am intense to be around. As I said earlier, my friends are incredible and managing my intensity really well, I think. But every day feels like it's full of deep self-discovery. And some of it is really positive and some of it is outright distressing. It is a lot, but I am learning so much about myself. I am also hating the process a lot of the time. Some of the feelings are still too big or still too hard. And what I am doing with those, if a feeling comes or I have an experience that I am desperate to kick out of the door, what I'm doing is I'm noticing that and thinking, okay, this isn't something I can feel or this isn't something I can receive or accept at this particular moment. Like somebody being especially kind to me and I can't deal with it. If I really want to push it out of the door, what I'm trying to do instead is just sit in the same space as it. We don't have to engage with each other. We don't have to interact, but we can share a space for a minute. And I don't know whether that's an idea that's useful to anybody else who has feelings or experiences that they instinctively want to kick out at. But if it is, maybe sharing a space with it is somewhere to start. Learning that I can talk about difficult things in the moment I'm feeling them is quite a revelation. I'm a lot more used to afterwards saying, that was really hard, but you don't have to worry, I'm okay now. And when I started challenging that, I came up with a lot of things I've told myself over a lot of years about why I must not share those moments. But I'm learning that some people in some moments do want to hear more of that than I thought. And one of the good things that has really come out of these last few weeks and months is that friends, whether they are new friends or people who've known me for decades, are getting to know me even better. It's scary and it's vulnerable, but when they can hear that and see that and love me, that's a huge thing for my psyche to absorb. Other good things about feeling the feelings, and this is a more long-term one, I hope, is that the goal is for that to result in fewer weird manifestations of those feelings, less of a sense that if I just keep the stuff, I'll be okay, I won't have to feel it, or less of a sense that if I just do something minorly self-destructive, that's okay, because then I don't have to feel it. I think the biggest good thing out of feeling the hard feelings is that allowing myself to feel the hard feelings more deeply seems to magically mean that I'm feeling the good things so much more deeply as well. I've always been somebody who is full of love for people, but my love for people is deeper than ever. If I get myself out into nature, however begrudgingly, it is not just pretty, it is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. If I get a nice cupcake in a coffee shop, it's the tastiest thing I've ever eaten. When I allow myself to access and feel and experience the hard stuff in a bigger way, the good stuff is bigger as well. And that is helping me to feel like maybe I am equipped for the harder stuff. Maybe I can do this. Maybe I can feel this. And I don't know if your difficulties with stuff or with other difficulties in your life are also connected with a lifetime of pushing away the really hard or the really overwhelming or the really traumatic things. And I'm not saying that this is a really happy thing to try to do, and it's also a hard thing to do if you don't have support around you. This is not, I have a solution, go feel your feelings. I can't make that recommendation because this is hard. However, if there is an element of objects protecting you from feeling the hard stuff, and especially if you think that, like me, you have a pattern throughout your life of behaviours and coping mechanisms that, on the one hand, were self-destructive or harmful, and on the other hand, served a purpose that got you through, but part of that purpose was to not have to feel the really difficult stuff, then it might be worth, like I have been doing, starting to wonder about that. Jan would say be curious about it. Ask yourself some questions, because I'm in a hard place, but it's less hard than it was even a week ago. And I hope I'm not tempting fate by saying that. And I'm learning that even though it's sometimes unpleasant to feel the feelings, it's sometimes really cathartic to feel the feelings. It's sometimes really gratifying to allow myself to feel something. It's sometimes healing to allow myself to feel something. And it's sometimes not as big or as scary as I felt it would be. If there's something you've pushed down for 20 years, it becomes a real monster in your head. Maybe it wasn't that bad to start with. Some of it is, but not all of it is. So I expect when I edit this, I'm going to realise it's just as intense as I have been in 90% of my conversations over the last few weeks. I hope it means something to you. I hope you get something from this.
It's the bit where that hoarder shouts out someone wise.
So shout out this week to the Declutter Hub podcast. Have a listen to them talking about regret when decluttering or dehoarding.
But how do we move past the lure of just-in-case items? It's all about evaluating the pros and cons of keeping something and feeling in control of the decision you are making. Once your decisions become intentional, most of them will be the right ones. But occasionally, you may let something go that you later discover would have been helpful. It is natural that when you are embarking on making decisions about a lifetime of things, something might slip through the net on occasion. Don't allow this to be a setback. We need to be brave and confident that letting go of a surplus of items will allow us to find and cherish more important ones.
Okay, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening to That Hoarder Overcome Compulsive Hoarding podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you on board. You can find all the links I've mentioned and a transcript of the episode online at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. To find out more about how you can support this podcast and the overall project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support and do subscribe to the podcast so you make sure you don't miss any future episodes. There may be links in this podcast that earn me money. This doesn't come at any extra cost to you if you make a purchase through those links, and it helps to support the podcast.